Okay, this is my response to Ben Townsend's bullying and harassment witness statement. Again, I haven't answered to everything, but the ones that I specifically had a point to make, I have. So, number 23, it starts at the top, claimant's response to Ben Townsend's B&H witness statement. Number 23, as implied by Tony Salmon, it is common knowledge about the tribunal. As stated by me, in my response to that comment, quote, the OPGs, that's operational postal grades, had been informed before I got there, and that could only have been from management, end quote. Ben Townsend is correct in saying that I do perceive that John O'Shea is out to get me, and others besides John O'Shea. Number 25. I usually am matter of fact, as I have the disability called Asperger's syndrome. I usually speak in a monotone and deal in facts rather than fantasy. I do believe my card is marked. I do obsess over things, which is typical behaviour with Asperger's syndrome. Ben Townsend has never seen me lose my temper, but when stressed I may have verbal outbursts and cannot prevent myself from saying what I think, and I often have long bouts of chatter, all of which is typical of Asperger's syndrome. And if any of the managers at Royal Mail had ever bothered to look it up, they would realise this. If I, to quote Ben, slagged him off, end quote, if slagged him off means expressing my opinion and being upset, I may have done, but it would have been because of the stress and mental injury that I have suffered because of the events in this case, which I believe is the intention of John O'Shea, as he manipulated this stress reaction from me more than once at Ipswich, as I can prove, and in fact, as I have proved to an employment tribunal. Number 27, I do believe Tony Salmon is, quote, stirring the pot, end quote, to the same ends as John O'Shea. Ben Townsend is correct in saying that I believe Tony Salmon is part of this conspiracy to get me sacked. Ben Townsend rightly says that I have had issues with Royal Mail in the past, although I had hoped that after being vindicated by the tribunal's judgment, I would not have to suffer any more. Had John O'Shea not come to Norwich, I might have been fine, but I feel this move was designed to cause me further problems, and John O'Shea bringing Tony Salmon to Norwich has exacerbated this situation, and I believe it is deliberate. Whatever I have told Ben Townsend about Ipswich is true, as I do not lie because of my Asperger's syndrome. To lie requires flexibility and creativity, neither of which are my gifts. It is true that Ben Townsend has only my word for it, but I can prove it again if required. Number 35. Since my return to Norwich, John O'Shea has been on the floor 2 or 3 times a week and sometimes more. But I believe this is to establish the argument of John O'Shea, Paul Hayes and Pat Parsons. This was not the case before I left Norwich. I should add, to go to Halesworth. Number 41. Ben Townsend acknowledges that John O'Shea goes in the manager's office. Yet John O'Shea argues in his statement at number 92 that, quote, I don't have to use the room and, end quote, and, quote, I don't like meeting in offices, end quote. John O'Shea has certainly made a point of standing in the company of others and does talk to other managers, but he stares at me on occasions, which Ben Townsend may not notice because it is not directed at him. 42. As I've said elsewhere, I am not claiming that John O'Shea being on the ground floor is intimidation, only when he is staring at me. Once again, Andy Brown has not put my complaint truthfully, jeopardising and sabotaging the answers and thereby the outcome of the investigation. 43. I do not have an issue with John O'Shea being on the floor at the same time as me, or with him doing his job. I do not believe it is unrealistic to ask that John O'Shea and Tony Salmon keep their distance from me, and it is part of the ATOS recommendation that John O'Shea and myself should not come into contact. Number 44. The question calls for Ben Townsend's opinion as opposed to facts. Whatever. Number 45. Ben Townsend's opinion is his own, but if he were in my position, he might see it differently. Given the inaccuracies in the way that Andy Brown writes these interview notes, which are not verbatim, as I have complained about elsewhere, I have doubts about the way the next statement by Ben Townsend is written. It appears to me that Ben Townsend is acknowledging that when I submit a complaint or take action, within a day or two, John O'Shea comes down to the ground floor. This is when John O'Shea stands staring at me, whether in the company of other managers or not, and this has happened each time I have made my complaints, even if they are sent directly to HRSC, Human Resources Service Centre. This tells me that there is a breach of confidentiality at HRSC, which exposes every claimant to reprisals, and this must be dealt with by Royal Mail swiftly. Whilst Ben Townsend says he has, quote, never seen anything like that, end quote, I understand his desire not to incriminate himself and risk reprisals, and reiterate, as I have said elsewhere, that this is about perception, my perception. If Ben Townsend were in my position, it might appear differently to him, which I hope will not be the case for him. Once again, I do not complain because John O'Shea is on the floor, but because he stands there staring at me. 46. Once again, Andy Brown appears to be investigating me rather than those complained of, and also appears to be trying to set me up. Whatever I may or may not have said to Ben Townsend or anyone else, it does not imply that Ben Townsend has done the same. To reiterate, I have Asperger's syndrome, which is a disability, and I chatter incessantly at work, especially when I'm stressed and depressed because of this case. Before you go down the avenue of breach of confidentiality in your bid to conduct code me, I will point out again that management at Norwich and Halesworth have breached all confidentiality in this case, as I shall aver. Like that word, A-V-E-R. And I believe management in HRSC have done the same, which is your department. I'm talking to Andy Brown here. At all times, Royal Mail has failed to deal with my complaints properly and in timely manner according to the Royal Mail grievance procedure, the statutory grievance procedure, the Royal Mail bullying and harassment procedure, and Royal Mail's, quote, our code, code of business standards, end quote. And they have failed to protect me under their legal duty of care and as a disabled person. Furthermore, the ACAS handbook on bullying and harassment advises victims of such treatment to speak to their colleagues, and as far as I'm aware, we live in a country where freedom of speech is everyone's right. How can Royal Mail expect its employees to adhere, I've missed the word to, confidentiality when management will not lead by example? Why do Royal Mail expect me to keep quiet while these corrupt managers are destroying my career? Does Royal Mail believe that forcing me out of my job will silence me? Okay, we haven't finished the actual statement here. Number 48. Andy Brown has written, quote, JF has told me that you, square brackets, BT, commented that John O'Shea's actions were designed to intimidate. End quote. I do not believe that I said this at all. Number 49. I agree with Ben Townsend's full answer. Number 50. Once again, Andy Brown, who are you investigating? Note again that the date of this is a day after I had the meeting with Andy Brown, and after Pat Parsons asked me what that meeting was in connection with, which I believe Pat Parsons reported to John O'Shea. Number 51. This answer is somewhat hurtful and does not actually answer the question. Number 61. This confirms my complaint insomuch that I have told a colleague at the time that I am being harassed and have explained how, which was not in the bullying and harassment procedure at the time, so What I mean there is that I was not involved in the bullying and harassment procedure at that time, so it is not covered by confidentiality. Again, this confirms my complaint. 63. I do believe that I'm being harassed. I also understand why Ben Townsend will not commit to saying if he has seen it or not, as he has concerns of reprisals and what this would do to his career. And given what I have said about confidentiality above at number 46 and elsewhere, and the way that I am being treated for raising a genuine complaint, I am not at all surprised. I believe Ben Townsend has been as forthright as he could be under difficult circumstances and have no issues with him personally for anything in this statement. Well, I'm not quite sure about that. I probably do have something about it, but, you know, the fact that he hasn't supported me when he's seen what's going on. Anyway, signed James Fisk, 29th of June, 2014. And come on, fingers, work.